Canada's judicial system is far from perfect, and navigating the courts can be daunting. For sexual assault victims who are fighting to get justice, it also comes with added fears and concerns. A section in the criminal code that advocates say allows their attackers to potentially subpoena their personal records. And joining me now here in studio is Tanya Cooch and Alexa Barkley, the co-founders of Survivor Safety Matters. Thank you both for joining us here today.
Thanks for having us.
So you recently petitioned the government to make changes to a section in the criminal code. Walk us through what that section does and says and what you're asking of the government.
So our petition is related to Section 278.1, which explains the process that the courts go through to include personal records in the criminal process. So personal records are things like therapy notes, they could be children's aid records, medical records, things that you normally would have expected to have privacy. Under the Privacy Act, they can be brought into court using the process in Section 278.1.
So what do you hear from survivors and victims when it comes to the courts, when it comes to this specific section of the criminal code?
So we're hearing that although this section of the criminal code is meant to protect survivors, it's not actually doing so. And I think actually Tanya's story is a great example of the violations that are continuing to occur under that section.
Yeah, so in my case, the court subpoenaed 7 years of my counseling records. And it led to a stay of proceedings in my case, which isn't in the interest of justice to have, sexual assault cases stayed. So.
Right. We are hearing that from multiple survivors that they've either decided not to continue through the process because of the risk of their personal records being included, or other survivors are deciding not to get mental health support because they will then have those records included as evidence against them.
And, court is already stressful on its own. And, some people are waiting years to even be able to go in front of a judge here. So touch on that, the fact that this is deterring people from actually getting justice.
Absolutely. So the government will say we want people to report. We also want people to access mental health support. But then they have a clause like this that allows those mental health records to be weaponized in a court process. So it is further deterring people from reporting.
And what fears did you have as, you're being told that your records are being accessed potentially?
Well, first of all, the person who assaulted me has no right to see that information. So that's the biggest concern, is why would I want somebody who had harmed me to access my private confidential therapy records and my personal journals? Like, that's none of their business, and they're the most dangerous person who would ever see that information. And then, of course, they can use it against you afterwards. So they have information about you now, and they can use it to torment you after court is over.
And so this is something you guys are really hoping to change here. I do want to read a statement in response to that petition online here coming from the government. Quote, "The Canadian Victims' Bill of Rights provides for specific victims' rights, such as the right to have their security and privacy considered at all stages of the criminal justice process and to have reasonable and necessary protection from intimidation and retaliation. This is vital. The third-party records regime limits the accused access to the victim's private records that are in the possession of third parties and establishes a special procedure to be followed where production of third-party records is sought in proceedings involving sexual offending." So this is a response by the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. It's a long statement. I thought it was really important to include in there, but I do want to get your response to that.
So a few things that are worth pointing out. So the Victims' Bill of Rights sounds amazing. There's a lot of really good stuff in there, but it's not enforceable at all. So our rights are not actually being protected, even though the Victims' Bill of Rights exists. Section 278 does offer more protections than have existed in the past as far as protecting people's personal records. But what we're hearing from the survivor community and what Tanya experienced is that those records are being allowed into court, and these huge subpoenas are being made for many, many years and to present, which functionally cuts off the survivor's access to mental health supports.
It sounds like there's some sort of disconnect here with, the government's response and what you're telling us is actually happening in courts to the survivor community here. Do you think as a country with our judicial system, there's an understanding of what victims and survivors go through as they navigate this system?
I don't think there is. We're actually very excited that the Ombudsman for the Federal Ombudsman for Victims of Crime is doing a systemic review, because I think what we need is more of a survivor voice being pulled into some of the decisions that are being made at the government level, because so often you sort of operate in silos, and the feedback is not necessarily being taken into account when they're making decisions.
Tanya, for you, what are some things that you think we're just missing the mark on?
Well, I think the people who are making the laws haven't actually used the system. So here we are, and many more voices are trying to, explain to the government that it's not working, and we're specifically raising this issue because it is a concern. It is leading to stays of proceedings. It's leading to victims being cut off from support. And even if they continue with therapy or counseling, it affects the quality of the therapy because you feel that you're not free to talk about the things you need to. So we are telling the government that this is a problem and they need to start listening to us.
And really quickly, we have about 20 seconds left, but I want to give you the opportunity to talk about a day of action you have coming up.
Yes, so I'm part of a team of survivors who are working on a Voices Against Violence rally that's going to take place October 21st at noon across the country. So if anyone would like to participate in that or reach out to our organization, they can go to voicesrally.org, and all the information will be there. As well, I want to encourage people to participate in that systemic review that the Federal Ombudsman is conducting. You can reach out to his office. We'd love to get as much survivor feedback involved in his study as possible.
Okay, thank you both very much for taking the time to come here and speak to us about such an important topic. Thank you again.
Thank you, Faiza.